Hello, hello. Welcome to the Warrior Stocks podcast presented by Achaeon.com. My name is Max Beach and let's get to it. Please note that the content of this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice. Welcome, everybody, to the fifth episode of the Warrior Stocks podcast. Today, we are going to introduce one of these segments that I've decided to do on hopefully a regular basis. We're going to call it Out of Pocket Fridays. But before that, if you're new to Achaeon.com, please go check out all the content on the website and go check out Twitter or Instagram just to stay in touch with what goes on. I guess you'll have to stick around and see if you like the content here before making any decisions. But welcome again, and welcome to everybody coming back. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to hang out and learn a little bit about crypto today. Before coming up with the idea for Out of Pocket Fridays, I knew that I wanted to do an episode on crypto just because it's such a hot topic of conversation within investing and within trading. It's been a topic since 2022, it's been a topic since 2020. I remember a kid in high school had bought Bitcoin and nobody knew what it was. I'll be honest, I still don't have great familiarity with what it is. But what I do have is an education in macroeconomics and microeconomics, and I have an idea for what an ideal crypto would be. And an ideal crypto has nothing really to do with the trading that goes on day to day in Bitcoin or Ethereum. It has more to do with managing an economy through inflation, managing an economy through a recession. And I think that is going to be where crypto ends up going. And this is not a discussion of me recommending Bitcoin or recommending Ethereum or talking about Solana or anything surrounding that. I just want to talk about the concept of having a perfect currency. And I thought that would fit well with the show, just as a little bit of a background episode that could help develop your ideas of what's going on in the world around us, not just for investing purposes, but also other places you can put your money. And crypto is an option and it has some benefits as an asset class, but I do have some reservations when it comes to the crypto that is today. And we'll get into all of that if you want to stick around and hang out. Before we get into crypto, I want to start off with talking about the concept of money and the US dollar. So, money, right? We have green bills, we have nickels, we have dimes, we use credit cards, we have checks. The usefulness of money, as everybody knows, is that it stores value and you can trade a dollar for a dollar's worth of something else without having to make it, without having to do anything to it. You just want it and you have this value and you can buy it. That is what a currency can do, and that is what money does for us. Money has taken many different forms throughout the years. It has a connection to religion, going back to ancient times when the people who managed money were actually, it was the church. And now, today, for us, it is the Federal Reserve. And so, getting into the US dollar, the Federal Reserve's mandate is to provide stable prices to the economy and try to maximize unemployment or maximize employment while maintaining stable prices. And the way the Federal Reserve does that is that it tries to control the money supply. The money supply is basically if you could put all of the US dollars that are in the world or in the economy that is flowing in and out of checking accounts every single day, that is the money supply. So if the Federal Reserve wants to stimulate the economy, it can add some money to the money supply, leading to prices rising. Or if it wants to cool the economy, it can take some money away and try to lower prices. But the way the Federal Reserve does this is through interest rates and through trading securities on the open market. We're not going to dive too deep into the ins and outs of how it all works, but just know the Federal Reserve is in charge of this money supply. So, from what I understand, crypto is basically an argument against the system we have today. And for several reasons, I don't mind that criticism. What we have today is a blunt tool that isn't uh it isn't perfect. It doesn't work as optimally as it could because the dollar that I got paid in cash, right? The Federal Reserve doesn't know that it's in my pocket at a certain time. It might be able to track down when it was in my pocket through a bunch of transactions and a bunch of different receipts, but really it's an estimate for where it could be. But we think that that dollar is in the economy every single day. I think the argument for crypto really is that due to blockchain technology and the ability to distinguish one crypto coin for another crypto coin, like you can distinguish $2 that are sitting next to each other. If you are able to track every single dollar in the economy all at once and know the exact measurement of money supply at a certain time in conjunction with information on prices as well as GDP, as well as any measurement within the economy, hypothetically, you could algorithmically figure out what the best monetary policy is at a certain time. You wouldn't have to depend on a Federal Reserve, which is a group of human beings, to make bigger decisions about the economy. Every single day for the Federal Reserve is a day to decide whether they are going to send the US economy into a recession or not. Not to that extreme, but they have to decide whether they want to weaken the economy or strengthen the economy for several reasons, and that usually revolves around inflation. Like how inflation was running hot in 2021 and 2022, the Federal Reserve decided to boost interest rates a ton to try to slow down the economy. The goal isn't necessarily to send the economy into a recession, but but the goal is to slow it down enough that we don't have inflation every single year. And so when you hear this debate between soft landing and hard landing, nobody really knows what's going to happen because it's such a blunt force tool. We don't know how it's truly going to affect things. And the argument for an algorithmic system of prices are here this month, the money supply is here, because we're able to use a certain, let's just say it is some futuristic form of artificial intelligence or some really developed code, we have a program that knows the most efficient money supply to have at a certain moment of time to attempt to maximize employment while maintaining stable prices. And if a code is doing that, then we don't have to have people making what you could describe as larger than life decisions. We hear on the news, right, that unemployment's ticking up. But what does that really mean? When a percentage of unemployment increases in the United States, that statistically results in people dying because people have less access to food if they're not making any money, and just a whole bunch of things happen leading to people dying when unemployment increases. The Federal Reserve obviously isn't trying to make that happen, but in the past, the Federal Reserve actually didn't have an employment mandate. Back in the early 1980s, after battling inflation throughout the 70s, the Federal Reserve tried to have a system of regulating money supply, similar to how I'm talking about, where there's an equation, and if the money supply numbers reach a certain point, then the Federal Reserve would increase rates by a crazy amount or decrease rates by a crazy amount. And clearly, if you look at the economy in the early 80s under Reagan and Volcker's interest rates, you can see that it caused a lot more harm than good. Yes, inflation came down, but we lost jobs in this country. We uh, harmed a lot of people's wealth. Like, it was a difficult time. I know, probably I'm 22 years old, so a lot of our parents at this age were going through the early 80s. They were young kids. Like, that was not a great time to be around. It was difficult to buy a house. We're talking about mortgage rates today that are at, like, what, 7%? Back then, it was like 20% or plus. Like, think about that, 20% interest rates on a mortgage? That's insane. Or if you wanted to buy a car or do anything that had to do with debt. And so the argument for a crypto is that it would actually be an accurate way to measure monetary supply, which back then, the aggregates for money supply, M1 and M2, there was a lot going on, and it was such an early usage of those statistics that sometimes they weren't right. But then the Federal Reserve would be making these crazy calls based off of incorrect data. So, from crypto's perspective, in a perfect world, that is what a crypto would do, or a new kind of currency. Maybe it's not even crypto, it's just what a perfect currency would be, is something that we can regulate on its own. And if we need to weaken the economy, it's done on the basis of a mathematical formula or an advanced artificial intelligence, not a group of people who, in their own heart of hearts, have their own political agendas, have their own thoughts, have their own feelings involved. And that's the argument. And bringing that into what crypto today I think is far from what this is, but it almost trades as if that is what it is. And let me explain that. Whenever you notice that inflation news is kind of crazy or people are feeling upset with the economy, notice that Bitcoin prices actually boost. Or if people are upset with the Fed, Bitcoin prices do well. Crypto does well in that situation. Although Bitcoin, I don't think is ready to be the United States currency, that is what the argument for having Bitcoin be is like if it were to replace the dollar bill. But I don't know enough about Bitcoin at this point, but I know that Bitcoin is actually used for a lot of hidden transactions that you can't track, which a proper crypto would be able to see everything because that's what you would need. You need a proper crypto to know what the money supply is, to what the accurate number is to actually regulate things. And that would be incredible because instead of these giant booms and busts that we have in these times of, yes, a lot of money flowing through the door, but we wouldn't have times of desperate recessions where unemployment goes up to 10% because we would have a system that regulates things perfectly and takes the job away from us in making those judgment calls and discussing the philosophical aspects of economics, like why are we allowed to do these things. Back in the day, like how I mentioned, it was the church who regulated things, and people placed their faith into the church. For the United States, whether we know it or not, we are placing our faith into the Federal Reserve every single day, a body that is made up of people that aren't elected by us, that probably have a bigger impact on us every single day than the ones that we do elect. So that's the argument that I think there is for crypto, and I think the blockchain technology would support this, and that is why you would want to be long Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of these coins, is because you're long this idea, and this is a way to express that you want this to happen. But the problem is that Bitcoin isn't that. Ethereum isn't that. Solana isn't that. I would think that for a proper coin to have any usage, or a proper crypto or a proper cryptocurrency to have any kind of, relevance, it would have to be done through the government. And the government would have to develop a USD coin that does exist, but everything would have to transfer over to that. There would have to be zero loose ends. And that's probably something that would happen into the distant future if it ever does happen. Or there would have to be some sort of financial catastrophe that leads us to make that revolutionary change. Because today, I don't know if that technology is around or exists. But that's that. That's the discussion. That is the argument for crypto is to replace the dollar bill. And I think you'll see crypto do quite well if I had to take any guesses in 2024, especially if Trump gets elected, because he's been talking about deregulation surrounding crypto, and regulation has been something of a hot topic within the crypto community, which I think is the antithesis of what a proper crypto would be. A proper crypto would be heavily regulated, but the hardest decisions would be automated. Um, so yeah, that's my thoughts. I could be completely wrong, but that is my macroeconomic understanding of the situation and how I see it. I personally do not own any cryptocurrencies, although I understand what a proper currency would be. We just don't culturally have that capability yet, but maybe one day. So, right now, if you think about crypto, crypto is probably an inflation hedge because it means that you have lost faith in the Federal Reserve, and that is the exposure you can have. That's how it trades, even if that's not what the actual underlying will be. So just be careful. I don't recommend it. Not that this show provides any recommendations. I don't see a lot of merit in buying and holding it besides gambling, but you know, there's many ways to make money, and crypto has really worked since it hasn't. Uh, but that's like everything. So I'm going to close out saying thank you for sticking around Out of Pocket Fridays. We're going to keep this going. I think next week I'll dive into artificial intelligence and how just kind of the actual understanding of all the pieces that go into NVIDIA. And I think that could be an interesting conversation for everybody. Maybe we could call it Hot Topic Friday, but I prefer Out of Pocket Friday because that's kind of funny in my opinion. All right. Continue to do the research, continue to employ your curiosity, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. See ya. If you want to learn more about Achaon.com, you can visit the website at Achaon.com. Achaon is spelled ACHAION.com. You can also follow Achaon.com on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. The dot is spelled out DOT. Achaon.com.